Welcome to One Bills Lite, your alternate discussion space for all things Bills. Coming up, how much does Josh Allen's contract extension help the Bills remain a perennial contender? And are there any other ripple effects from such a commitment? NFL on CBS analyst Charles Davis joins us to talk Bills Super Bowl contender status, and we ask our one burning question. Let's roll!
And it's Steve Tasker who has been all over the field.
Kind of unique. He was kind of a dual-role player for you. Steve!
A balloon.
Steve! A blimp? We're not even in the stratosphere of normalcy here. And thanks for joining us here on One Bills Lite, your bonus Bills coverage that is fresh and different from our daily show, One Bills Live. We are now in the throes of the preseason, and although Josh Allen has yet to play a preseason game after Sean McDermott confirmed he would not play in the preseason opener at Detroit, his impact both on the field and off will be paramount in Buffalo's present and future. And not just because he's the quarterback, but because he's going to be paid like a franchise quarterback going forward, which, as we know, Steve, changes the dynamics of how Brandon Beane and his staff will need to build the roster going forward. The 6-year extension, which essentially ties Allen to the Bills for the next 8 seasons, has its pluses for both Allen in the form of guaranteed money, for the team in terms of cap flexibility. So, Steve, have the Bills and Josh Allen achieved cap nirvana with this contract?
Yeah, nirvana might be an overstatement, but certainly it's a cap-friendly deal for the Bills. It's a 6-year extension, but the money's spread over 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big help. And it also gets signed while the Bills have a roster that is built around Josh Allen now. So this contract, as it gets closer and closer and deeper into it, will get better and better for the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
So now, with the current roster in place where they're going to take a swing for the fence this year, no question about it, and probably next year and the year after, yes, 3 years down the road, the cap will be significantly higher, and all that higher cap money goes towards other players.
Yeah.
It's going to give them more and more space to refurbish the roster and keep the talent around Josh Allen healthy and up to snuff so that they can make a run for it every year.
Yeah, and I think the big benefit of getting the quarterback done first is now you know what the hard and fast numbers are on the guy that's making the most money on your roster, or what those numbers are going to be. So it allows you to effectively plan for the rest of the roster around him. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on the numbers. That's not what this discussion is about. But I did find it interesting that the cap hit for Josh in year 2, next year, 2022, actually goes down from what it originally was under his rookie deal. It's supposed to be 23.5 with that 5th-year option. It's not. It's 16.3 now. So that's an extra $7.2 million, which may not sound like much, but until you realize you can probably sign a second-tier free agent, or even better.
Or a first-tier
depending on
lineman.
the position.
Yeah, first-tier offensive lineman.
I mean, that's what
big.
That's what you've done with
big.
some of the room that you have created. And as Steve mentioned, by getting Josh signed to a longer-term deal, they can give him more guaranteed money up front and then keep the cap from getting them in a cost-prohibitive situation where they can't keep the roster flush with high-end talent around him. It's really a win-win.
Yeah, even down the road, there isn't one of those. There's years where he gets a lot of money, but it's not a big boom in cap because the money will be spread out over the remaining years. So even at the end of this contract where you think, like we've seen with Phillip Rivers, with Peyton Manning when he left Indianapolis and went to Denver, there's no $28 million balloon payment. Now, he'll get a chunk of money like that, but it will never count against the cap like it has for some of these other players, and it'll give the team the ability to do that and still get under the cap.
Well, there's a $42 million roster bonus either next year or the year after, I can't remember, but you can spread that over the last 7 years because it's a roster, it's a bonus. Even his base salary, which goes up to like $27.5 million in 2023, that's in the year where the cap is supposed to take a giant leap forward, when the media deals that they just signed now will be reflected in the salary cap number for the league going forward. And the thing that I like there is, even though it's a probability, Steve, that the salary cap jumps significantly in that year when the media deals and the revenues therein kick in to the revenues for each of the 32 teams, it's a probable scenario. It's not a certainty. So they even protected themselves against that, because that's the year where Josh gets $27.5 million base salary, and you say, oh my gosh, is that bad? What if the cap doesn't go up in the way they anticipate? If you put a giant payment in base salary, you can restructure that. You can't restructure the big bonuses. So that was smart, too, in doing that. So really, Jim Overdorf, Kevin Meegank, and Brandon Bean, a bang-up job on that. So now, Steve, not that the Bills needed it, but how much more goodwill does it give this organization when the players see quite possibly the most talented player on the roster get compensated for being the player that he is? I think there are a lot of people on this roster that are in a very good place with the organization, but doesn't this just reinforce everything they talk about?
Well, it's good on a number of levels. First of all, we know Josh is going to continue to work hard. I mean, the guy put his foot on the pedal. He said he's getting paid for what he's going to do, not for what he has done. That's a good message for your guy to send. And I think there's a little bit of, well, in recent weeks, it's like a little Aaron Rodgers thing. If you got a guy like Josh Allen who's getting all these guys the football, he's winning games, and he's a rock star in the NFL by any standard. Like Aaron Rodgers says, listen, guys don't go to Green Bay to retire. They go to play with me.
Well, yeah.
You're going to have guys wanting to busting down the door and say, you know what, I might want to go to Buffalo. I've heard about their culture.
Emmanuel Sanders is an example already.
And the guys that they re-signed in John Feliciano and Darrell Williams, guys who didn't want to hit free agency. Matt Milano didn't want to hit free agency.
And probably took a little less.
There's no doubt. So, yes, there is. They get a lot of benefit from signing Josh, certainly to keep him happy because of what he's done and what he's going to do, but also because it lives up to the culture that they put out there that, listen, if you earn it, we'll get it. You can get it here in Buffalo. Not only will you get what you deserve, play time, practice time, a roster spot, move up the ranks of our roster inside the season. Mm-hmm. If you're working hard and doing it, you're going to get rewarded for it now, not in the next contract in 2 years down the line, but right now. That flies in the NFL, particularly in the players level. They are sitting there going, listen, if I work hard and do what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to get it right now. That's huge, and I think this is another indication that whatever the Bills say they're going to do for these players, they come through in a big way.
Yeah, they put their money where their mouth is, quite frankly.
Their money and their play time and the opportunities.
And I think also what this contract does is it tells everybody else on the roster or anybody looking at the Bills, hey, in this era of unprecedented quarterback movement, we're not going to have an Aaron Rodgers situation here. Right. We're not going to have a Carson Wentz relationship deterioration to the point where he wants out. We're not going to have a Deshaun Watson situation where he's going through the motions at training camp so he doesn't get fined. That's not going to happen here. And I think that's what this contract reinforces. I did see, and I want to credit the proper people here, Jay Hart from Yahoo Sports did present an interesting stat on highly paid quarterbacks. He said since 2010, the only QBs in top 10 in salary in the league to even make a Super Bowl since 2010, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Eli Manning, Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning. I think that's kind of like, oh, well, just because you pay the guy doesn't mean you're going to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's what this stat says to me. What it says to me is you can have the all-world quarterback and you can pay him, but your job's not done. If you don't surround him with the proper support in terms of talent, coaching, you're still unlikely to get to the promised land.
Well, here's the thing. 25% of the possible quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, which means in the last 10 years there's been 20 quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. 5 of them have been in the top 10. 4 of them won it. So almost 40% of the Super Bowls were won by guys in the top 10 salary cap.
I don't think there's any question you need one to get there, but that doesn't guarantee anything.
No.
If you don't do right by the rest of the roster.
Right.
It's just, to me, it's almost like, well, yeah, of course. Like it's almost like a no-brainer. But too often, if you don't structure those contracts right, or you get into a habit of kicking the can down the road, Rams, Saints, you make it that much more difficult for the franchise quarterback to succeed because there is lesser talent around him because you simply can't afford it with your cap situation.
Right.
Time now for our numbers game where we test Steve's razor-sharp memory and quiz him on all things football. And with quarterbacks the topic of discussion here, Steve, I thought I would try to lob you one that would be relatively easy. I've given you some tough ones over the past couple of weeks. So I want you to name for me the top 10 leaders in passing yards from last season. Are you ready? In no particular order, just fire away here.
Okay,
I
so
anticipate you will be able to get all of these guys.
Yes, in fact.
Oh, you want to go in order? You want to up the ante here?
I got a chance of getting these in order.
Woo!
I got a chance.
Okay.
All right, here, let me just get let me look off into the distance here. All right, here we go. First one, Deshaun Watson.
Right. Led the league in passing on a 4-win team.
2, Pat Mahomes.
Yes. 4,740 yards.
3, Joshy Boy.
Nope.
Josh
But
Allen.
Josh is on the list. He's 5th.
Josh Allen's not it?
He's 5th. So Watson with 48-23, Mahomes with
so I got
47-40,
I went 1,
Josh
2,
Allen
5.
45-44.
3, I will say Justin Herbert.
Nope, Justin Herbert's 6th, though. He is on the list. He's right behind Josh. How about this? I mean, Justin Herbert, 43-36 in 15 games.
Okay.
He missed, Tyrod started the first game
Right.
last year for the Chargers. He's in the top 10. He only played 15 games.
I will say
Mahomes also only played 15 games.
Phillip Rivers.
Phillip Rivers is 10th, 41-69. That's a good one, Steve. The guy's out of the league. You might not be thinking about him. That was a good get.
I'm going to say David Carr.
David Carr just outside the top 10. He was 11th, 41-03.
I not get all these in.
Come on, you're missing some obvious names here.
Brady.
Brady was 3rd, 46-33.
I'm going to say Tannehill.
No, Tannehill 15th on the list. A little bit down there. Come on, there are some big-name quarterbacks you have not mentioned yet.
Okay, hold on. Russ Wilson.
Russell Wilson is 9th, 42-12.
How many have I got left?
You have 1, 2, 3 left, Steve. You've got 7 out of 10. Come on, make it a
All
sweep.
right, here we go. Matthews from Detroit.
Stafford?
Stafford.
No, 12th. He's 12th, not Stafford. I would say 2 of these guys are known for throwing for a lot of passing yards almost every
It's
year.
not Drew Brees.
Not Drew Brees. They're known for throwing for a lot of passing yards just about every year.
Kyler Murray.
But they don't. Nope, not Kyler Murray. But they don't get to. They don't get to the playoffs. At least the last few years.
Drew Lock.
Not Drew Lock. Big name guys.
Oh, golly.
Pass for a lot of yards every year. But their teams have not been very successful the last few years in terms of playoff berths. And then there's one guy that you haven't gotten yet that's a little odd.
Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan, there you go. There's one of them. 45-81. He was 4th. That's one. Now think of another guy that throws for a lot of. The numbers look great every year, but for some reason they just can't get to the postseason.
It can't be Dak Prescott because he's,
he got
it's not
hurt.
gonna
He missed
be-
almost the whole year.
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins. Now the one you have left is one I thought you would have gotten either first or second with your guess. He's staring you in the face. He's laughing at you.
Mitch Trubisky.
Not Mitchell Trubisky. No, not Mitchell
He's
Trubisky.
standing here. He's got to be around the
No,
building. right?
no.
Okay, hold on. All right, I'm going down the list. I'm going down. Yeah, okay. It's not Goff.
Not Goff.
It's not.
Oh, Steve.
I said it's not Goff. You can't buzz me for saying it's not him.
Oh,
skin.
I hate to do this to you. You're going to kick yourself if you don't get
It's not Fitz, is it?
It's not Fitz.
Wait, don't tell me.
Get back to the upper echelon of quarterbacks in the league.
Don't say it. I'm going down to like 32, my list of 32 teams.
So you have, just to review, you have guessed Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Phillip Rivers.
I said Brady, too.
And, yeah, Brady. Did I say that? I think I said it. You are missing one from this list to make it a clean sweep.
It's not Carolina guy.
And...
Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Not Jimmy Garoppolo. Oh, Steve.
It's not Darnold.
This is... If I asked you the question...
I'm missing the team. I can't think of the team.
If I asked you the question, you have 3 picks to start your franchise with a quarterback. This guy would easily be one of your 3 choices. Not Joe Burrow. One of your 3 choices. If you did not have a franchise quarterback and you had a chance to get this guy, I think he would be one of your 3 answers. I could be wrong. And I'm not talking about to play for 10 years.
Right.
To win you a game this year.
Oh, Aaron Rodgers.
There you go. Aaron Rodgers, the league MVP. To complete the
What a zero. I should get a...
Oh, he saves the best for last. Oh, that is just the way of Steve Tasker. Good job. You got a clean sweep here.
I hate myself.
Time for our featured guest of the week. It's NFL on CBS analyst Charles Davis, who took in Bills training camp this past week. Charles talks Bills Super Bowl contention, the value of continuity, and more. Here's Charles. Charles, thanks for getting us some time in your busy schedule. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me as always. Always great to talk with you guys, see you, and actually see you, right? Because last year, everything was like this if we did it at all, right? So I'm really excited about this. Always great to be back here in Western New York. Always great to be in Buffalo. And I got to tell you, there's a great vibe around this place. Fantastic vibe, and I'm really looking forward to this season.
Yeah, actually, you and I got a chance to talk for about 10 minutes before Sean McDermott did his media conference today. And you're right, it is nice to be able to shake hands and sit there and talk face to face instead of over a Zoom like this. However,
absolutely.
What are your impressions? I know we spoke about the culture that's been built here and all that. What about the nuts and bolts? What did you see on the field that struck you about this particular edition of the Bills?
Very efficient practice. And when I go around to different places, people do things a little bit differently everywhere. But you can always feel like teams you expect to be good by how they go about their business in practice. You know, Steve and Jay, one of the things that I did not hear any of today, which to me is always a telltale indicator, I didn't hear back in the huddle. Okay, meaning the call didn't come in right, the wrong personnel was in the game, all those things. I didn't hear run it on the line of scrimmage, put it on the line of scrimmage, run it again. I didn't hear that. There's not a lot of bumbling and stumbling through. It was very efficient. Plays were called. There was snap, dispatch. And these guys know how to practice. I think we all know now the story in Carolina where the young safety trying to make the team went right through the receiver in a drill and was cut before they got back to the locker room because he didn't understand how to practice and protect his teammates in a practice situation. We had none of that today. So I'm just talking about the basics, but the basics are a big thing because they tell you a lot about a program, a team, and what Sean McDermott as a head coach and his staff are demanding in coaching.
And speaking of that coaching staff, I think it kind of has quietly gone by the board, Charles. I mean, everybody's talking about the talent on this roster, and understandably so. But you had 2 guys that were coordinators on this staff who were up for head coaching jobs, did not land them, and they're back here. I mean, this is Brian Daboll's 4th straight season. It's Leslie Frazier's 5th straight season with this club. Even Heath Farwell, the special teams coordinator, is entering his 3rd season. Can you just speak to the value of that for a team that is a contender like the Bills?
Oh, the value is huge. It's immense. And just think about, if you're talking about this is Brian Daboll's 4th year, what year is it for the starting quarterback, Josh Allen?
Yeah, fourth.
4.
Okay. See, they're hand in hand, hip, lockstep, whatever you want to call it. It's no accident that as Josh makes his jumps, Brian Daboll is right there for every step. You got to give Josh all of his credit for taking the coaching, for putting in the extra work, for becoming a more accurate thrower, developing as a player leader, all those things. But at the same time, now for lack of a better term, he speaks Brian Daboll very well. Okay. And it doesn't have to be full form sentences now. I bet they speak shorthand to each other now, meaning they understand what the other one is thinking, what you're trying to get to, what you're saying, and they can do it in a very short order. And I think that's a huge part of what's going on now. When the play call comes in from Brian Daboll, I will bet you more times than not, Josh Allen has that play call in his head already and expects it to come in. So you're right about the continuity on all sides, offense, defense, and special teams. And that's what makes good teams good programs. Now you got to understand, because they have that continuity, but they have it because they've had success. They have it because these people are very good at what they do. You're not going to have a lot of continuity if you're going two and whatever, because it'll be new people in there.
What are your thoughts on the Josh Allen extension with the way the landscape of the quarterbacks? He's the second highest paid guy behind Pat Mahomes now. You've got the 2018 quarterback class. They're all kind of standing in line. Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. So what are your thoughts on how the rest of this is going to play out for these other quarterbacks? Because the top 2 guys, while they did make a ton of money, did lay out their contract in a way that the team is going to be able to put some pieces around them.
Yeah, Tom Brady gets a lot of credit for a lot of things. Do we dare say Tom Brady effect here with these guys? Right. Talking about Mahomes, talking about Josh Allen, meaning they saw what Tom Brady did, where he did, how famously for how many years helped restructure contracts by taking less money or moving his money around or whatever. I noticed that there was an article moved today about Russell Wilson saying that he was willing to do that to help out Dwayne Brown as left tackle and maybe even KJ Wright, the defender. So these players understand, making the money is a big deal. Taking care of my family is a huge deal. And they're not leaving a ton of money on the table, quote unquote, but they're making enough for themselves. At the same time, how can I help my team? Mahomes did it with the way he structured his contract. Josh Allen followed suit. Now, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, right? Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield next in line. If they indeed get this, I wouldn't be surprised to hear about similar type of contracts in order to do this. Because once these guys get a taste of winning in this league, they want to keep going. And how can I continue to do that? Brady, Russell Wilson, those guys set a great example because they gave up money, quote unquote. But what did it pay off with? Playoff appearances, Super Bowls, the whole thing. So I think it's the right way to go about looking at it. But like John Houseman used to say on the old Smith Barney commercials, you have to earn it. And these young quarterbacks who are next in line, how do they earn it? Josh Allen got to an AFC championship game. Patrick Mahomes been to back-to-back Super Bowls. Can Lamar Jackson get the breakthrough? Can Kyler Murray make the playoffs? Can Daniel Jones have his Giants team have a winning record, if not the playoffs? Baker Mayfield, can they advance in the playoffs? That's how you earn it, by leading your team to greater heights.
Speaking of earning it, Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with Charles Davis here. You being a defensive back, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, a former defensive back, because Levi Wallace, as an undrafted guy, has come in and basically has earned a starting job opposite Tre'Davious White for the better part of the last 3 years, has taken on all comers in competition every single training camp, and has come out on the right side of it. He is in that again, although he seems to have a stranglehold on the starting job yet again, as his fiercest challenger is Dane Jackson, the former 7th-round pick from last season, but he's really not made a dent in trying to challenge Levi for that role. Steve and I look at Levi as that perfect steady Eddie player. He may not make the spectacular game-breaking play, but he's going to make good, solid decisions out there on the field, and it's clear that the coaching staff trusts him. Can you maybe just quantify the value of that kind of player and how he fits on a roster that maybe still has some high-end talent back there with him, like a Micah Hyde or a Jordan Poyer or Tre'Davious White?
Oh, that's a great question, Chris. And look, bottom line with all of that is you have to have an organization that is willing to say maybe we drafted guys higher or we signed a free agent we thought was better. But guess what? The guy we didn't expect is actually the best player. You have to be willing to eat. I wouldn't call it necessarily in this case, but a lot of organizations have trouble saying, okay, the undrafted guy beat out the guy I drafted. Oops. Okay, if that's the case, my team's better. But a lot of people say, oh, no, I can't do that because then I look like a lousy evaluator. You don't have that kind of ego here with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and the rest of that great personnel staff. They're going to play the best player for the spot. And you noted how does that fit in? Well, guess what? If you can have a Levi Wallace win the job before the big money kicks in, it allows you to do things at other spots as well. But I give the Bills organization a ton of credit because coaches will stand up in front of their teams all the time. Steve knows this really well. Hey, the best player is going to play. But if you don't put the best players out there, the team knows it pretty quickly. If you put the guy out there who shouldn't be, after you've told him, hey, I'm going to play the best players, you'll lose confidence in your coaching staff. You don't have that issue here at all. And give Levi Wallace a ton of credit because it wasn't just here, as you guys know. He had to walk on at Alabama, too. Give this guy a ton of credit for who he is.
Well, as this season gets underway, it's going to be a little different in a couple of ways. One, there's an extra regular season game, 17-game schedule, and there's only 3 preseason games. Do you sense any seismic shift as to how teams will approach their preseason and how they're going to play these guys, when the starters will get sharp, when they'll sit down, that kind of thing? Is there going to be a seismic shift, or is this just forget it, we're just skipping one preseason game?
That's a great question, Steve. And my gut tells me no seismic shift this year, but I feel like this year would be a shakedown year for it because we're going from 4 to 3. But it's not just the 4 to 3 because remember, we had none last year, so that was a whole different ball game. But it's not just the 4 to 3. It's when the third game's being played.
Yeah,
because remember, when we did the third game before, it was rough. Unless you were in the Thursday night opener, right? It was roughly 10 days before you played. Now we're talking about a full 2 weeks. Some coaches may have some trepidation about sharpness, right? Last time they played. But I think most people are going to err on the side of keeping my guys healthy, and we'll deal with, some rustiness out of the start. But we'll find out because, look, let's be honest about it. Are any of us betting that this 3 will become 2 sooner rather than later in the preseason?
Absolutely. You know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know it's going to happen.
Charles, as always, we thank you for the time. We know you got a busy schedule, so thanks for carving out 10 minutes for us. We appreciate it. And I know you got your fingers crossed that you and your broadcast team are up here week 1 for Bills Steelers. We'll keep our fingers crossed, too, and hopefully we cross paths then.
Well, you guys are the best. Thanks for having me on, Chris. Steve, you take care of yourselves. Keep kicking butt like you always do. And make sure if you're playing golf with Steve Tasker, either have your wallet loaded because it will be lighter at the end of the round or just be his caddy because that way you can actually make a little bit on the round. Because if you're playing him, you're losing everything you got in your pocket. My man's got a serious stick.
Charles, you're killing me. Thanks, man. Talk to you later.
Safe travels.
You guys be good.
All right, we wrap up this week's episode with our one burning question. Do we expect Buffalo's 3rd preseason game, Steve, to be the dress rehearsal for the starters as it's always been, even though there are only 3 preseason games?
I'm going to say yes. I think you're going to see Josh Allen a lot in that game. It's going to be a home game against the Green Bay Packers. I think the coaching staff, they'll give Josh a chance for the fans to love on him a little bit. It's 2 weeks before your opener. Plenty of time to get ready. And I just think it's a smart way to go. They'll still have 2 weeks to get ready. It'll be close enough to the start game. They'll have these 2 games, this Detroit game on the road, the Chicago game on the road at 1 o'clock to get the young guys on a 1 o'clock kind of time frame, game day schedule. Let the big guys go in that 3rd game and let them play past halftime.
The thing that says this is probably going to stay the same as it did when they had 4 preseason games to me is this. It's the 2-week
Yeah.
run up to the regular season. If you play these starters and use the dress rehearsal in your second preseason game, that's 3 weeks removed from the season opener. I think Coach McDermott and a lot of other coaches around the league are going to be concerned about, much like Charles Davis said, how sharp these players are. Like, you worry about them being on their P's and Q's in every aspect of what they have to do out on the field. You don't play a game for 2 weeks. It's hard to, that's even a stretch.
Yeah.
So I think, the dress rehearsal is week 3 of the preseason, as it has always been, and then you just do what you need to do between that time and the regular season opener to have your guys ready. But you go 3 weeks, I think any coach would tell you, that makes me a little nervous. That's a long layoff.
Even at the end of the year when you're trying to get guys healthy, and rarely do you – even teams that – there were a team I was on that we shut it down like week 13, after we were 12-2 or something.
Yeah.
Those kind of spot, you don't really want to take your foot off the gas too much even then, because you're going to meet a team that's really hitting on all cylinders, and you've got to be ready for it.
Yeah. So what does that mean, you think, for the second preseason game? Any playing time for the starters who saw no action in the first one?
A series or 2.
Yeah, a little bit, right?
Yes.
They get a smattering of
first quarter
action.
They'll get 2 series. They'll probably want them to get 13 or 14 plays in, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, I think it's a slow ramp up. It's a slow burn to the third preseason game. That's probably how they handle it.
They're playing a lot of football during the week. They're playing a lot of They're taking a lot of snaps Monday through Friday or Saturday or wherever the game is, and they're going to get a lot of football in, but the real challenge for most of the players is the fact that Josh Allen is still getting the lion's share of the snaps at quarterback. Steph Diggs, when these guys are healthy, they're getting all the reps with the number ones. They're and they're practicing a lot. You'll get these guys playing in this first and second preseason game who have not had that many reps, and certainly they may have some plays called in the huddle. They haven't run at full speed because Steph Diggs ran it, or Cole Beasley ran it, or Devin Singletary ran it, or whoever, and they may run plays that they've actually never run since camp started because there's such a long menu of plays. When they get in there to do their reps, they do other plays, and so that's a challenge for the young guys in these early preseason games.
The other thing too, and you pointed it out, the practice scenario and the reps that they get in practice through the course of the week. Coach McDermott said it this past week. He said, "Look, we determine playing time in the preseason games and also factor in how much time have they gotten on the practice field through the course of the week." They have all those rep counts for every player documented. They know, this guy got a ton of work in practice this week. He's good.
Right.
And when you factor in the reality that the Bills have a pretty unique tempo here on the practice field. It's not like this everywhere else in the league. It's efficient. You heard Charles Davis, who sees a lot of different training camps. They have a unique efficiency to the way they get things done. It's at a tempo that is as close to a preseason or a regular season game as you will find in the league, and that pays dividends, and it probably affords this coaching staff the opportunity to say, you know what, this vet's good. He's gotten quality reps in practice this week. We don't need to risk injury in a preseason game for him. He's ready. He'll be ready.
Yeah, and it's also fluid because it'll move along. Like, for instance, this week, Steph Diggs gets his knee dinged. He's out for a couple of days. John Feliciano gets his shoulder dinged. He's out for a couple of games. Deion Dawkins has been walking around. He's been saying he can't play. So all of this stuff goes on, and that's fluid. There's no control over it, no anticipating it. So that will get thrown into the mix as well for every position, not just the ones I mentioned. There's every guy's got a little bit of a tweak he's dealing with. Most of them are nothing. Even the ones I mentioned are nothing.
Yeah.
But if they don't get a chance to practice a couple of days before the game, it's like, let's wait, But if they do, and they're back in there, and they're looking good and feeling 100%, then that changes things. But all the injuries and the nagging things you get during training camp that kind of, it's kind of like when you're playing golf and you get a light sprinkle, it kind of dampens things a little bit. You're like, is this going to be
always
good?
bringing it back
Right,
to golf.
So that will remain to be seen. They may have a plan in place of who they're going to play and what they're going to do, but as always, that's up for grabs when you talk about injuries and sore muscles and extra reps in practice because another guy wasn't there.
After no preseason last year, I think people realize there is some value to preseason as it returns this summer. That'll do it for this episode of One Bills Lite. Be sure to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use so you know when our next episode drops. Or you can watch and listen to us on the Bills YouTube channel. And always remember, when there isn't enough time to listen to our daily show, One Bills Live, there's always enough time for One Bills Lite. For Steve Tasker, I'm Chris Brown. We'll see you next week, everybody.